2009, a grainy smuggled video shocked the world. A royal from Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Isa bin Zayed, was caught on tape brutally torturing a man and even running him over with a car. Years later, in 2021, the FBI charged ex-NSA operatives for helping Abu Dhabi spy on Americans. But that's only the beginning. Behind the gleaming skyscrapers and facade of innovative leadership are secret torture sites, billions hidden in shell companies, and royal-backed trafficking. Get ready as we expose 7 disturbing truths about Abu Dhabi's billionaire royals, and the last one might just break you. The Abu Dhabi royal family lives in a reality most people can't even imagine. Their world makes billionaire lifestyles look modest. We're talking about car collections that feel more like museums, rainbow Mercedes S-classes, monster truck limos, and enough custom supercars to shut down traffic in 3 countries. And that's just their garage. When they fly, they don't do private jets. Think Boeing 747s and Airbus jets decked out with gold-plated bathrooms, full cinemas, onboard lounges, and suites more lavish than most 5-star hotels. Then there's the water. Their super yacht, Azam, isn't just long, it's military-grade insane. Over 590 feet of floating power, faster than some warships, and guarded like it's hiding state secrets. But the flex isn't just in their toys. Behind the scenes, the royal family moves global markets with $1 trillion hand. The Abu Dhabi Investment Authority oversees more than $850 billion in global assets, quietly embedded in cities, companies, and banks you interact with daily, whether you know it or not. And with that kind of wealth, even the darkest crimes can be buried under designer clothes and private jets. But when the skeletons involve human trafficking, even royalty can't hide forever. In 2017, a Belgian court found 8 Emirati princesses guilty over servant abuse. Some hinted at human trafficking. The details are chilling. It all started in 2007 when Sheikha Hamda Al Nahyan and her 7 daughters rented out an entire floor of the Conrad Hotel in Brussels. They arrived with 23 servants, mostly from Africa and Asia. But instead of being treated like employees, these workers were treated like property. They were forced to work around the clock. No proper food, no beds. Some slept on the floor outside the princesses' doors, forbidden from leaving the hotel. It wasn't until one of them escaped and contacted authorities that the abuse came to light. What followed was a 9-year legal battle with one goal: to hold royalty accountable. That year, the Brussels Criminal Court handed each princess a 15-month suspended sentence and fined them €165,000. And here's the shocking part: not one of them showed up to court. Human rights groups called the verdict historic. Gulf labor rights expert Nicholas McGeehan said this kind of abuse is common among the elite, where mistreating domestic workers is seen as a symbol of power. Yet, despite the guilty verdict, no one served jail time. I mean, why would they? They're trillionaires, right? This case proves one thing. Even when the system does hold the powerful accountable, money still buys freedom. And for the victims, justice came far too late. The UAE, especially Dubai and Abu Dhabi, has long been a magnet for shady financial dealings. But most of the time, it's not the government pulling the strings. It's dirty money hiding in plain sight, laundered by criminals using the Emirates as a convenient stopover. Still, there are exceptions. Big ones. Take the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, BCCI, once majority-owned by the Abu Dhabi royal family and the government itself. It collapsed under the weight of scandals, bribery, money laundering, and even terrorism financing. But nothing compares to what came out in 2016, when the Panama Papers dropped a bomb. In 2016, the Panama Papers revealed that Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the late president of the UAE and ruler of Abu Dhabi, was secretly sitting on a £5 billion real estate empire in London. Not through official government channels, not through the UAE's sovereign wealth fund, but through a tangled mess of offshore shell companies designed to keep his name out of every document that mattered. At least 30 shell firms, all incorporated in the British Virgin Islands, were used to buy entire blocks of property across London, luxury flats near Hyde Park, prime real estate in Mayfair, and mansions on Kensington Palace Gardens. These companies were overseen by a Liechtenstein-based entity called the Joseph Vogel Foundation. The goal? Total invisibility. Sheikh Khalifa's name never appeared on UK property records, but it wasn't just about privacy. These shells were built to dodge taxes, avoiding stamp duty, inheritance tax, and any kind of scrutiny. In one case, a single company quietly acquired over £1 billion in property without ever revealing who actually owned it. The most disturbing part was that the UK let it happen. Until 2022, Britain had no requirement for foreign companies to disclose their real owners. And even with the mounting evidence, authorities barely lifted a finger. But you'd be surprised how far these billionaire royals are willing to go to silence their critics. The royal family of Abu Dhabi wants the world to see them as visionaries, pioneers of the future. They sponsor glitzy sports events, pour billions into tech and clean energy, and build gravity-defying skylines. Their PR machine is relentless. These carefully curated narratives paint a picture of innovative and progressive leadership. But it's just that, a picture. Behind the curtain is a brutal intolerance for opposition. And no one embodies that truth more than Ahmed Mansour, a father of four, an engineer, a poet, and one of the UAE's most famous voices for human rights. In fact, he was the recipient of the Martin Ennals Award for Human Rights Defenders in 2015. So, Mansour didn't call for revolution. He didn't rally crowds. He simply spoke about freedom, about justice, about dignity. For that, the regime made an example out of him. In March 2017, Mansour was arrested and disappeared into the belly of the state. The charges? Insulting the prestige of the United Arab Emirates and publishing false information. His sentence? 10 years in prison, a $270,000 fine, and 3 years of surveillance after release. Since then, he's been held in solitary confinement in Al Sadr prison. No bed, no shower, no window, no regular contact with his family or lawyers, just 4 concrete walls and silence for years. International outrage followed. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and even UN experts condemned his treatment. They called it cruel, inhumane, a clear violation of international law. In 2019, UN officials warned that the conditions could cause irreversible damage to his health. And still, nothing changed. In 2021, Mansour managed to smuggle a letter to the outside world describing his conditions. The government's response was to double down. Harsher isolation, even less contact, more silence. While the UAE dazzles the world with skyscrapers and sports cars, Ahmed Mansour sits in a concrete box, forgotten, silenced, and left to rot. And that's the price of speaking the truth in a country that claims to be modern, so long as you keep quiet. You probably remember the UFC's pandemic era, when Abu Dhabi became the center of some of the most thrilling fights in MMA history. For a while, it seemed like the only place brutality existed was inside the octagon. But it turns out that more than just brutality, true human suffering happens behind palace walls. In 2009, a horrifying video surfaced showing Sheikh Isa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, son of the UAE's founding president and half-brother to the current ruler, torturing an Afghan businessman named Mohammed Shah Poor, and we're not talking about a scuffle. At the time of Isa's trial, Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Isa's own brother, was chairman of the Abu Dhabi Judicial Department, effectively overseeing the entire court system. The conflict of interest was staggering. Mansour controlled the purse strings and appointments of the very judiciary that tried his sibling. Unsurprisingly, the court accepted Isa's defense that he had been drugged by conspirators and blamed 2 American whistleblowers who were convicted in absentia. Human rights groups weren't having it. Human Rights Watch slammed the verdict and called out the UAE's justice system for protecting the elite while silencing everyone else. But even with the public outcry, absolutely nothing happened. Sheikh Isa walked away untouched. The UAE has spent years crafting a sleek, modern image, glittering skyscrapers, luxury malls, driverless trains, and robots at the airport. Once heavily reliant on fossil fuels, the country now earns over 70% of its GDP from non-oil sectors, including tourism, real estate, finance, and renewable energy. Most of the UAE's economy, in fact, is 95% non-oil. But beneath this facade of progress lies something far darker: a brutal network of secret prisons in southern Yemen. Since 2015, while Yemen spiraled into chaos, the UAE quietly backed local militias that ran black sites, illegal detention centers where torture was the norm. In 2017, an investigation by the Associated Press blew the lid off the whole operation. What they found sounded less like a modern military alliance and more like a medieval horror show. Prisoners were burned alive on rotating metal rods, something they called the grill. Others were electrocuted, raped, and beaten into submission. One such facility, Beir Ahmed Prison in Aden, became the center of these abuses. Detainees described genital electrocution, group sexual assault, and psychological torture that left them broken. Yemen's own interior minister demanded that the UAE hand over control. The UAE responded by denying everything. But it didn't stop there. U.S. forces were confirmed to have interrogated prisoners at these black sites. While the Pentagon insisted it never witnessed or participated in abuse, that's not enough. The U.S. is bound by the Convention Against Torture, and working with torturers, even indirectly, raises serious legal questions. At the center of these operations was Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, then Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. In 2020, a French judge launched a case accusing him of complicity in torture. 2 years later, the case was tossed. France claimed it didn't have jurisdiction. And just like that, it faded from the headlines. No trials, no justice, just diplomatic shrugs. The victims are still silenced. Meanwhile, the UAE keeps pitching itself as a futuristic utopia, while ghosts from its black sites still scream in the dark. The Abu Dhabi's billionaire royals love to flex their plans for smartest city on earth by 2031. Behind the scenes, it's been knee-deep in some of the most brutal war zones on the planet. Yemen, Sudan, Libya, name a hotspot, and the Emirates has had its hands in the blood. But one of the darkest chapters happened in Tripoli, January 2020. It was supposed to be a normal night at Al-Hadba Military Academy. Young Libyan cadets, most barely out of high school, had just finished drills and were winding down on the parade ground. Then, out of nowhere, a missile slammed into the courtyard. 26 cadets were killed on the spot. Another 33 were left injured, many with burns and missing limbs. Survivors called it hell on earth. But here's the part that makes it worse. The missile wasn't fired by a local militia. Investigators later confirmed it came from a Wing Lung 2 drone operated by the United Arab Emirates. The weapon was a Chinese-made Blue Arrow 7, fired remotely from Al-Qadim Air Base in eastern Libya. The target? Teenage trainees. The UAE was backing General Khalifa Haftar's forces at the time, throwing support behind his attempt to seize Tripoli, completely ignoring international arms embargoes in the process. And despite overwhelming evidence, including UN findings and a BBC investigation that laid it all out, nothing happened. The UAE denied everything, as expected. Meanwhile, the families of those cadets are still demanding justice that's likely never coming. But honestly, it gets worse. Now, before we expose number one, you should know that we're tracking global elites abusing their power. And trust me, Abu Dhabi's royals aren't the only ones. Subscribe now and stay notified every time a new story drops. One of the most unlikely dark secrets of Abu Dhabi's shady royal family wasn't the well-known Manchester City financial breaches involving illegal sponsorship tactics linked directly to Sheikh Mansour's companies. No, it was something far more surprising. On May 23, 2017, Qatar woke up to find itself completely cut off. Borders sealed, airspace shut down, shipping routes blocked. In a matter of hours, the country was isolated. Grocery stores were swarmed, shelves emptied. Everyone was in panic. All of this chaos was because of a fake news story. Qatar's state news agency had been hacked. A bogus statement appeared, claiming Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani praised Iran and slammed US policies. It was obvious disinformation. Qatar denied it immediately, but the damage was done. UAE and Saudi media ran with it anyway, pushing a false narrative until it exploded into a full-blown diplomatic crisis. Then came the smoking gun. US intelligence later confirmed that the UAE orchestrated the cyber attack. Emirati officials had literally discussed the plan just a day before the hack. This wasn't about fake headlines. It was a calculated move to crush Qatar's influence by branding it a terrorist sympathizer and Iranian puppet. The consequences were brutal. Qatar, which relied heavily on imports, faced severe food and medicine shortages. Families were separated. Citizens were kicked out of neighboring countries. Trade collapsed. Travel was paralyzed. Despite pressure from the international community, the blockade dragged on for over 3 years. It wasn't lifted until January 2021, when Saudi Arabia abruptly decided to play nice again. But by then, the damage had been done. The 2017 Qatar blockade wasn't just a political stunt. It was a cold, calculated attack, one that exposed just how far the UAE was willing to go. And behind the curtain were Abu Dhabi's royals pulling the strings. And that's a wrap for today. But before you go, remember, as long as wealth and power go unchecked, stories like these will keep surfacing. If this opened your eyes, hit subscribe. We've got more untold truths coming your way. Thanks for watching. See you on the other one.